Thousands of Palestinians continue to flee northern Gaza as Israeli troops push into the heart of Gaza City. And the UN and Red Cross continue warning of a humanitarian catastrophe. While here in the U.S., the House of Representatives, which I should note has still not passed a budget to avoid a government shutdown, took time out of its schedule yesterday to censure Democratic Representative Rashida Tlaib, the sole Palestinian American in Congress, over her rhetoric about the war between Israel and Hamas. 22 Democrats joined most Republicans in the rebuke, accusing her of calling for the destruction of Israel for her use of the slogan, "From the river to the sea." The censure, however, did not come before heated debate on the House floor.
Rashida Tlaib has the right to spew anti-Semitic vitriol and even call for the destruction of the Jewish state. But the House of Representatives also has the right to make it clear that her hate speech does not reflect the opinion of the chamber.
What is true here is that every single one of them has not acknowledged the fact that Palestinians are dying in the tens of thousands, but will continue to say it is us who are not acknowledging humanity.
You had a member of your party call my colleague a terrorist, and you didn't censor her.
Palestinian people are not disposable. We are human beings, just like anyone else. The cries of the Palestinian and Israeli children sound no different to me. Why? What I don't understand is why the cries of Palestinians sound different to you all.
Joining me now is Democratic Congressman Brad Schneider of Illinois, who voted in favor of censuring Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib. And I'm sure you were able to hear, I know that you probably can't see it, but you could hear, and I'm sure you were hearing what Congresswoman Tlaib had to say yesterday. Tell me why you voted to censure her.
Well, thank you for having me.
Sure.
The issue is that the phrase "from the river to the sea" has a long history. It was initially the cry of the PLO in 1964. Mind you, the PLO in 1964 before Israel took control of Gaza or the West Bank. It is the rallying cry of Hamas, and it has a very distinct meaning. It is the meaning of the destruction of Israel and the murder of the Jews living in Israel. And so that's why it is a fraught phrase which carries heavy weight. And I think the important thing to recognize is that as elected officials, we all have a responsibility to express our feelings, express our views, and have the right to do so. But we also have a responsibility to measure our words, to reserve judgments, and to correct them when we misspeak or say things. Representative Tlaib has put up on her social media the lie about an attack on the hospital in Gaza that was not an attack by Israel, but was an errant rocket from Palestinian Islamic Jihad. I asked her to take it down. She still has not. And when she uses the term "from the river to the sea," people know what that means. They know that Hamas, when they crossed the border on October 7th, brutally murdered 1,400 people, took 240 civilians hostage back to Gaza, continues to hold those hostages today, and continues to fire rockets at Israeli cities from Palestinian neighborhoods in Gaza. When they say "from the river to the sea," it has a very specific meaning, and that meaning needed to be called out.
Well, let me ask you this question, because this phrase has had many meanings over the many years, and it has been used in ways that I think could be arguably negative toward Israel or wanting Israel not to exist anymore. But not everyone agrees that that's what it is. Are you aware that the Likud party, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's party, used in its original party platform, "between the sea and the Jordan, there will be only Israeli sovereignty"? So others have used the phrase as well.
And are just as wrong. And it's you know, I'm one of the founders and co-chairs of the Abraham Accords caucus in Congress, bipartisan, bicameral. And the idea of the Abraham Accords, the normalization of relations between Israel and Arab states, is that Jews and Arabs belong to the same land. Both have legitimate claims to that land, and both need to learn how to live on that land. And the Abraham Accords recognizes Israel, but also recognizes that by embracing each other, Arabs and Jews together can not only lift up the land, but can lift up each other, the people of the region, and give all their kids the future and prosperity that they deserve.
Let me read to you what Rashida Tlaib, her explanation of her use of the slogan. This is what she said. From the river to the sea is an aspirational call for freedom, human rights, and peaceful coexistence, not death, destruction, or hate. My work and advocacy is always centered in justice and dignity for all people, no matter faith or ethnicity. Did you have a conversation with your Democratic colleague before making the decision on how to vote on this?
I'm not questioning her intentions, her good intentions. I believe that she wants for the Palestinians the peace that she talks about and promotes. But the fact of the matter is that Hamas uses from the river to sea as their rallying cry. People around the world have heard that, have joined that, and have called for the destruction of the state of Israel.
My question to you, though, is did you talk to her? Did you have a personal one-on-one conversation with her?
She hasn't talked to me in over a year.
Let me ask you this question. Are you concerned about the optics of while 10,000 people have reportedly been killed in Gaza and 4,000 of them children, and while people are still dying, and the fact that she has family in the West Bank where settler violence is continuing, that she's been censured when I'm going to just put up a tweet by Mehdi Hasan, by my colleague Mehdi Hasan, about some of the things that others have said in the House. Republican Congressman Max Miller said Gaza should be turned into a parking lot. Republican Congressman Brian Mast said Palestinian civilians are like Nazis. Republican Senators Lindsey Graham and Tom Cotton said Gaza should be leveled and to bounce the rubble. None of those people have been censured. Would you call upon those people to be censured? And are you concerned about the optics of just censuring the one Palestinian American member?
Look, I have a long record. I called out Paul Gosar when he threatened Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I called out Marjorie Taylor Greene when she made inappropriate analogies to the Holocaust. When Brian Mast on the floor last week, when we were debating various bills, made the statements or similar statements to what you just described about the Palestinians, I called him out on it. We have to see the humanity on all sides. And it's not just the optics of 10,000 people dying in Gaza. In war, the civilians are always the victims. They're caught in the middle. Hamas started this war on October 7th with a horrific, heinous attack, killing 1,400 Israelis, murdering and raping those Israelis. They took 240 prisoners hostage that they will not allow the International Red Cross to visit or provide them the medical care that they need. We need to come together and talk to each other and find a way to promote peace. But as long as Hamas controls Gaza, as long as Hamas is threatening to destroy Israel and calling for the genocide of the Jewish people, there can't be peace for Israel or Palestinians.
And what I asked you about was not obviously the 10,000 people and 4,000 children dying is not optics. I meant the optics of censuring the only Palestinian American member of the United States House of Representatives. Very briefly, we're out of time.
It's not a question of who, it's a question of the words. And the statement from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, is a call for the destruction of Israel and the genocide of the Jewish people. And I will call that anytime.
And I will note that she does not agree with that, and that she has not embraced that. Okay, well,
I understand that.
Right, Congressman Brad Schneider. I'm so sorry, we're out of time. I wish we had more time.
Okay.
Thank you so much.